Hello everybody, this is jai+cross with Sacred Topics. This is actually the last show in the Sacred Topic series, and you could say that I've saved the best for last. We've got a big finale today. The title is Living as Sacred Dreaming. Wow. So I probably need to define some terms right at the outset. A lot of dream work has to do with setting a focused intention and really blazing forward on that, bringing your dream, your big idea, your big aha into physical reality. And this show will touch on some of that, but the emphasis is not so much on intention setting. That word dream's a stranger and has so many different meanings, some of them very heartfelt, very heart-opening, and others not so much. A lot of times when somebody is said to be dreamy, that's a put down because they live in their heads. They can't bring about things in a good practical way. So let me define dream. For the purposes of this show, a dream is an experience of non-ordinary reality, a vision of enhanced reality. Of course, many times people have nighttime dreams that just seem to be the mind spinning. It's got some agitation, there's some anxiety there. It plays through fairly routine scenes taken from everyday life. These don't necessarily qualify as visions of enhanced reality. But with the dream apparatus, we have the potential to use it in a way that takes us far beyond ordinary consensual reality. So my contention is that the spirit world can be accessed through dreams, through dreaming. A lot of times these episodes are referred to as trances, as trance experiences, yet I don't want to use that word. It can be taken to mean that only trained, skilled practitioners have that avenue open to them. Only people versed in shamanic practices are able to go into a controlled trance where they encounter spirits and the spiritual realm itself. So dreaming is actually a better choice for my purposes because everyone has dreaming available to them. Even if you haven't consciously remembered the dreams that you have at night, we know that everyone does in fact dream. To begin with today, I want to lead you through visualization. This might be a little different from visualizations you've done in the past. After a brief grounding, a brief centering, I'm going to lead you on a journey of the imagination. And hopefully you can drop into the place that I'm describing. Hopefully you will feel it. Hopefully a part of your being will actually be there. And yet after I paint this landscape for you, after I lead you down the path, I'm going to turn you loose for 90 seconds to have your own experience. So I'll be setting up the circumstance that will hopefully encourage your spirit to go a little bit farther in. And then at the end of 90 seconds, I'll come back on. You'll hear my voice. If you're listening to a recording of this broadcast, feel free to pause it if you want to stay there in that space a little longer, or even if you just want to linger in some of the sensations you've encountered there. People journey in different ways. I tend to be very visual. And so when I set up a visualization, I offer a lot of visual prompts. But I encourage you to be aware of any emotions that are stimulated, that arise during this journey. Oftentimes, that's where the strongest medicine resides, in the emotions that start to reveal themselves. So it's almost like the landscape you're in is highlighted in certain areas when those emotions appear. So the encouragement is to pay close attention to those. Okay, let's close our eyes, go into this space together. We start just by becoming conscious of our breathing. Inhale fully, causing the belly to swell. Then exhale fully, releasing any staleness, anything that's ready to be let go of, and thereby making space for the next inhalation to be correspondingly large and full. So let's spend a few breaths just centering ourselves, noticing the physical sensations. It's not necessary to think, to conceptualize at all. I ask you to imagine in your mind's eye that you're walking on a path through a forested area. It's a thick, luxuriant forest. Lots of trees, lots of shrubs, lots of wildflower, scattered grasses. It's not a spooky forest. It's not especially heavy in shadow. You can actually see the sunlight coming through gaps between the trees. It's a very inviting landscape, and you're walking along this path, noticing occasional rocks, hearing bird chirps and animal noises in the trees and in the brush. This is a very relaxing place, and even though you're walking with something of a sense of purpose, there's a lightness, there's a gaiety. This is something of a magical landscape. The spirits are very strong here. Perhaps you feel emotional currents passing through you. But the overall feeling is one of light, perhaps tinged with joy. You realize that this place, by its very nature, is something of a treasure trove. There are hidden gifts here. And with that realization, a light starts to glow in the near distance. And you feel your belly responding to it. It's almost as though something within your belly is being magnetized, drawing you in a gentle way towards that light. And as you advance towards it, your senses become amplified. Colors are stronger, sensations are stronger. And as you get very close to the source of that light, you realize it holds a special gift for you. I'm going to allow you to find and appreciate that gift by being silent and quiet. See if you can deepen your connection to this place and what has been revealed even further. Use your senses. And now thanking this landscape, this special place. Thanking any spirit helpers or guides that may have revealed themselves. Pull back away from the light. Draw your attention to your breath again. Feeling the physical sensations of the inhale and exhale. Center yourself in your physical form. And as you're ready, slowly opening the eyes. Well, it's quite possible that you experienced something approaching a dream state in that exercise. Perhaps it was stronger during the portion of the visualization where I was leading you. Perhaps it was stronger after you created your own experience. The truth is, we are hardwired to experience these light trance states. And it does us good to experience them. I'm going to start out today by talking about nighttime dreaming, how you can benefit from that, how you can work with it. And then we'll go into daytime dreaming, which this exercise was an example of. Hopefully you remember at least some of your dreams. I know that there are some people who claim that they didn't dream at all. Scientific evidence tells us that all humans dream. Some people don't have very good recall. And you can work with that. You can improve your recall. No question about it. I used to have very poor dream recall. These days I have very good dream recall because I've made it into a practice. I spend time programming myself to wake up when I have a significant dream. And by a significant dream, I mean one that seems to have an inherent message to it. Not just the idle spinning of the mind, burning off some energy. When you think about it, part of our psyche must act as sort of a dream director, assembling these images, positioning sequence after sequence. And yet, it seems that there's more to a significant dream than just psychology. To my mind, night dreaming offers an opportunity for us to connect with something beyond ourselves, beyond our personalities, beyond our subconscious, beyond our imagination. Now, of course, we do use the subconscious, we do use the imagination to make that connection. But if the circumstances are right, information from a higher source, from a source beyond our individual circumstances, can start to come through. We can open that channel. We can open that dream channel. Dreams are given to us as symbolic recreations, and with interpretation, we can understand what those symbolic meanings might hold for us, what advice we're receiving, what guidance is coming through. I'm going to give a couple of examples of dreams in just a few minutes that I've had that I think will lay this out in a good way. I often seed my dreams. So when I'm getting ready to go to sleep, when I'm in bed already, when I'm getting comfortable, moving around, making those little adjustments, having a drink of water, I do those little chores first. And then sometimes an idea will occur to me. I want to dream about this tonight. I have a lot of luck doing this. But if I didn't take it any further than that, I probably wouldn't have so much luck. It's necessary for us to encode our request in the language of a dream. So just saying, let's say, okay, a lot of times I'll code in a dream before I'm going to work with a new client. If I know I have an appointment coming up, especially a client who's going to do a shamanic journey with me. Let's say I've just gotten a call from somebody and they're having some self-worth issues, and I want to dream into it. What's the best way to approach this? Don't want to just use the rational mind, but what does the dream world have to inform me about this? So if I go to sleep thinking, oh, how do I work with this person's self-worth? I'm just engaging my left brain, and I want to go deeper than that. So I will use the words, but only as a place to start. Okay, how am I going to deal with, let's say, Jackie. Jackie's self-worth problem. So I've got that idea and calling on my creative mind. It's sort of like putting it in the form of visualization. I'm seeing a woman with a heavy shadow over her. So one way to lessen the influence of that darkness would be to give her a light. So now I'm seeing this woman. She's kind of faceless because in this case I wouldn't have met the client previously. But she's holding a candle in her hand. And that's dispelling the darkness somewhat. So I start to focus on that image as I'm drifting off towards sleep. And it might be that I see her in a natural landscape at first. I might see her in particular clothing. But my focus is going to come down to that candle. So if I can hold the image of that candle as I drift off to sleep, there's a good chance that something from that dream seed is going to come through from the other side. That's going to give me some information, a suggestion on a good way to proceed with this. Give me some specifics. And again, those specifics are going to be conveyed through symbols, through my imagination. I take these as good hunches on how to proceed. Whenever I have a dream that seems to be significant, I wake up as soon as possible. Sometimes it's not until I wake up in the morning around sunrise, but as soon as I wake up, I go and I write it down. My technique is to write down as much as I can remember. Colors, positions, exact words as near as I can recollect them, to get a record, a factual recreation of that dream. And only later do I try to analyze it. Do I interpret what the meaning might be? So it's very, very important to separate those two aspects. A lot of times people start in with the analysis right away, and then they lose a lot of the detail of what the dream contained. And it could be that their first guesses to the meaning is a little bit off. And yet their whole recollection becomes slanted, tainted by that premature analysis. So let me give a couple of examples. I have a dream notebook. I use it not just for nighttime dreaming, but for visions and shamanic journeys as well. They're all right here. This one I entitled Water Life Dream. And I put down a little bit of background information to help me recall what the seeding process was, if I used one or not. And for this dream, I asked Coyote, who's a power animal of mine that I work with, I asked Coyote for a dream of guidance around raising and maintaining energy. He is such a skilled hunter, always alert to his environment, that I thought he would be a good teacher in these things. So the dream I had in response to that request, and I didn't write down what image I used when I went to sleep, but probably there was one. I was standing before pools of very clear water that were separated by low concrete curbs. My wife was standing behind me, but she never went into the water. I saw a large oval white egg, like a goose egg, and went in the water to retrieve it. I saw and collected a few of these, thinking that I probably shouldn't be disturbing them, even as I kept doing it. The bottom was a repository of interesting, fascinating life forms that thrilled me. I was drawn to a reddish-brown shell with an intricate 5-pointed diagram on the top, and then noticed several of them lying nearby. One large keel-shaped object enchanted me, so I waded over in the shin-deep water to examine it. It was hinged near the top, and when I lifted the upper portion, a large white-beaked sea creature swam out. I wondered if I had interrupted its normal life cycle, and if it had hatched too soon. So that's the dream, as close as I could remember it. Put down the facts, I'm making a report. Later on, I went back and analyzed it. And remember that the original intention was to dream around raising and maintaining energy. So that's the filter I use for the interpretation. The water was filled with wonders that lit me up. Yet my response to those glories was somewhat tepid. I waded in the shallow water in a very human-bounded landscape. Remember those curbs. I was a treasure seeker instead of a full participant. I was after trophies. Instead of communicating with these life forms in their native environment, I collected them by taking them out of the life-giving water for future study. I wonder what mysteries these creatures would have revealed to me if I had only asked them some questions. So in regards to raising and maintaining energy, that gave me a lot of information about accepting things as they are on their own terms without doing the usual analytical approach of taking them out of their environment to analyze them under sterile conditions. That was a dream that really answered my question in a beautiful way, and I still remember the wonder of that place. It was just remarkable. What if, instead of me keeping most of my body out of the water, what if I'd gone in and submerged myself? What if I'd sent out questions from my heart to these life forms? How much richer that experience could have been. So that contrast was very telling to me. And I definitely feel that Coyote, or whoever mediated that dream for me, really did a good job, really gave me a strong blessing that night. Let me do one more. This is Michael as the Queen Dream. Sort of an odd title. And this one, I didn't use any seeding at all. I imagine I went to sleep in a normal way because I didn't make any comments about what had been going on in my life that might influence the interpretation. I was playing chess with a friend. It was my move, and I realized that I could activate my Archangel Michael piece. This moved like a queen in all directions. The actual piece was a small magnetic plastic statuette that I had bought in Santa Fe many, many years ago. I quickly placed my friend in check, which amazed him. I also had a knight nearby, so I had a powerful combination going on. That was the dream. Fairly short. You know, if dreams happened according to clock time, this whole sequence probably would have occurred in under 10 seconds. There were just a few images. I used to have dreams that went on in great sequences, like I was watching a movie or a play. And the more I work with my dreams, the shorter they tend to become. Sometimes I'll just get a single still image, but that image has so much power. And when that happens, I realize I'm supposed to focus on that particular representation. It's not that the dream is deficit in any way. It's a call to attention. So let me share my interpretation of that Michael is the Queen dream. Now you understand the title. It seems obvious that I am being encouraged to bring Michael, that's Archangel Michael, and possibly spirits in general, into my everyday world. Well, that's way cool because that's an underlying theme of this broadcast. In my dream, the piece he represented had all the queenly moves, but it was actually more powerful somehow. Perhaps the knight represented my ability to create safeguarded spaces or sanctuaries that allow spirit to fully reveal its power. Well, I thought that was a perhaps when I did the interpretation. I've come to believe that that is indeed the truth, that that was the message. By creating places where spirit can come through, I draw spirit more and more into my life. That's another underlying theme of today's presentation, so we're going to work with that one a little more. So pay attention to your dreams, and if you can, program yourself to get up and write them down as best you can. Analyze them later, look for the meaning. I used to use a voice recorder, a cassette recorder. It seemed to be easier to stumble into the bathroom, to click the go button, to record it, and I realized that when I did that, I ended up with lots of cassettes that I never listened to. So for my purposes, writing down my dreams and visions in a particular notebook where I know where I can access them is a lot easier way to do it. My composition book goes back to 2011, so I've got a lot of goodies stored in it that I can refer to, that I can reference very easily, very quickly. I'm going to move on from nighttime dreaming, because dreaming is an ability we have throughout the whole of our lives, not just at night. Let's first talk about how we wake up. So every night, we enter this creative space where we have access to the spirit world. And for most of us, there's a very abrupt transition period when we wake up. Many people shift gears immediately. They go from full sleep to full wakeness in just a couple of breaths. And whether you make that shift quickly or slowly. It's very important what kind of consciousness you come into. So you're in this expanded place when you're asleep, and many people wake up and their left brain starts going right away, and all of a sudden they're into this internal dialogue about the day to come or some event that's in the future, possibly something in their past. But the machinery is cranking. The thinky-talky mind is taking over. So from that very wide field of potentiality, we can collapse very quickly into a much more restricted field. A lot of times I find myself rehearsing what I'm going to do, how I'm going to play a role. Usually it's for the day at hand. And I realize that I'm ratcheting my focus down, down, down. I'm getting small. Energetically, I am shrinking. A lot of us choose to stay small as we move through our days. It might not be a conscious decision, but it's still a choice. It might be so habitual, so ingrained in us that we don't even realize that we've crossed a threshold where we could have selected a different option. So I want to briefly talk about 5 ways that we tend to keep ourselves small and out of the dreaming space, out of that connection to something much larger, much greater, out of our creativity, out of our potential, out of our power, out of our good stuff. So many people stay small by indulging in distractions and or addictions. These can be a whole gamut. Some people, as soon as they get out of bed, they got to have that cigarette, they got to have the cup of coffee, they got to have the shot of whiskey, maybe even before they get out of bed, they got to have some sex. But they're doing these things compulsively. So they're giving up their free will, they're responding to some programming, which quite often acts against their better interests. And of course, this tendency towards compulsion can remain a dominant factor throughout the day in how they approach their jobs, their relationships, their situation, whatever it is. So as I go through these 5, just be making some notes. That sounds like me a little bit. I know that one. A lot of times people go into judgments. And that's one thing I've found was true of me for a while. When I really started paying attention to that transitional state between sleep and wakefulness, that a lot of times I was going through some judgments. Some things, a lot of times there are judgments against myself, things that I hadn't said that I thought I should have spoken in the previous day. So it was kind of leftover blame, was starting off my day in a very, very uncomfortable way. But when we judge others or ourselves, when we get into that blaming thing, when we take offense, that energetically shrinks us down. Maybe that's not a habit of yours, right, when you wake up. But if you check yourself out as you go through a day, if you become aware of how you're carrying your energy, and then you go into a judgment, you'll probably be able to sense the difference. Even if you're not very aware of your energetic field and how it reacts and interacts with others, pay attention to the physical body and see if when you're doing that judgment, if there isn't a corresponding tightening that's going on. Many people feel this in the chest or in the belly area, but it can be back, it can be neck, it can be head, it can be a lot of different places. People have different ways of responding to stress, but usually those judgments cause stress and cause an energetic shrinkage. Again, that's a pretty good way to disconnect from the spirit realm that's available to us, to pull ourselves out of the possibility of entering into dreaming, waking dreaming. Well, the third way people keep themselves small is to try to control others, to engage in power dynamics. This can include pleasing. Many people, through their upbringing and the choices that they've made, have an almost obsessive quality for trying to keep people happy. They want to be liked. They want everybody else to be okay. It's a form of nurturance, but it's nurturance with a twist, because that's really trying to control other people. Sometimes it's not the best thing that everybody wears the happy face. Sometimes it's entirely appropriate that they're working through something on a deeper level, that they need to express some grief, some sadness, some anger, whatever it is. And that just trying to plaster that over is not in their best interest. So controlling people and entering into those power games, a lot of them unconscious, that ties up our energy and shrinks our field, shrinks our possibilities. In a similar way, self-worth issues cause that contraction, cause that tightness, pulls us out of the life flow. I think it's easy to imagine if someone feels that they are not worthy, that they don't deserve the good things in life, the support of the spirit world. Well, that breaks the connection right there. They're unplugging themselves from the socket that is wired to the energy of the universe, to the web of life. So if somebody goes into that fetal position energetically, if they just feel that they aren't worth it, obviously a lot of things become unavailable to them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have thoughts and feelings along this line, really best to work on them, to try to bring them out in the open, to try to understand what might have been behind those. And the show just last month went into a lot more detail. It gave a lot more tools on how to address this. Those are available in the archives, and I'll make mention of that right at the end of this broadcast. Well, the fifth energetic closure is fear. Many people are motivated in large part by their fears. They imagine worst case scenarios. Their fears will run rampant. Lots of different reasons for this. It's a very unhealthy environment that they're creating for themselves and for the people around them as well. Toxic chemicals being released in the body, which again causes us to shut down, again removes us from the glorious possibilities that are otherwise available to us. So in all these things, attention is key. If we feed our fears, if we feed our sense of not being good enough, if we feed our judgments against others, that's going to be our lives. So if you're in an unhealthy pattern in any of these categories, or in more than one, then try to figure out a way to do better for yourself. And again, that last show might give you some good tips. I see it as the difference between mouse vision and eagle vision. So mouse vision is very fearful. It's survival based. You can imagine there are a lot of things that would prey on a mouse. It needs to be highly alert, and it needs to focus on its immediate environment. A shadow overhead could be a predator coming. Noise in the brush could be a coyote or something else that would love to gobble down a mouse. So in mouse life, it makes sense to have a lot of fear. I used to live trap small mammals as part of a biological project I was working on in the National Laboratory. And we had these aluminum traps. We'd put peanut butter in, bait them at dusk, and then go out the next dawn to find out what was attracted to the bait, to do measurements, take their weight, take length, find out what sex they were, if they were pregnant females, trying to get a handle on some population dynamics of primarily small rodents in different areas. Well, some of those mice especially were so revved up and so fearful that it seemed like they had heart attacks while they were in the traps. We would come in the morning to collect them, to release them, and they'd be dead. These weren't on nights due to exposure. They weren't real cold nights. Apparently their hearts just started racing because they had that fear response, and they died as a result, even though there really wasn't anything to fear from us other than they might have an uncomfortable night in a metal box. So that response definitely can be out of line with the circumstances, and most people's fears are imagined, or at least exaggerated. So that mouse vision, as it occurs in humans, it's very detail-oriented. It's looking at the small particulars, oftentimes with a smallness of energy. It's almost like the close-up lens has gotten locked in place. You always have that view of what's right in front of you. And that's very uncomfortable. That's not a very healthy and not a very satisfying way to live. But luckily we have other options. Eagle vision. I saw a bald eagle yesterday. I thought that was so cool. I get a lot of signs of power in my average weeks. It seems like Spirit is connecting more and more. Spirit's revealing itself. It's showing itself in the circumstances of my life. I directly attribute that to doing the kind of work that we'll be talking about towards the end of this broadcast. Making myself available to Spirit. Using techniques which are available to anybody. They're very easy. You don't have to undergo a long training process. You don't have to train with Tibetan masters, anything like that. We will be talking about those. Well, eagle vision has the ability to take in the big picture. This eagle that I saw yesterday was flying majestically just along the side of the road that I was traveling down in southern Colorado. It was going about 40 miles an hour, and it was really doing some strong flaps. Very purposeful flight, going in a particular direction. Not sure what it was aiming for. I think it came from a reservoir that was farther up the valley. Might have just been going to a perch on a cottonwood tree because it was coming up to some dead cottonwood trees by the time I left. So eagle vision, instead of being focused on detail, it's focused on the web of life. It's focused on relationships, interactions, how things work, how they're put together. Eagle vision, very expansive, very heart-opening. Now, you don't necessarily want to stay in eagle vision all the time. If your toilet breaks, you might want to get that mouse vision going for a while and focus on the problem at hand, figure out what you need, get the situation taken care of. But hopefully, you can incorporate eagle vision at least sometimes in your life. So you have that feeling of being enhanced, that feeling of living life fully, that sense of fulfillment, that sense of dreaming. I would imagine that the eagles are really good dreamers, because it seems like they're connected to powers and energies and blessings. A lot of times I do see them on their perches, many times over water, sometimes over fields. They've definitely got that bird's eye view and that excellent vision as well. So let's talk a little bit about daytime dreaming. And by this I don't mean daydreams as it's commonly employed, but daytime dreaming as a gateway, as an entryway to higher consciousness. There are many cultures throughout the planet who place high value on dream time. Perhaps the Aborigines are the best known of these. They see nighttime dreams as containing prophecies, as containing guidance, as containing healing. But they carry some of that openness, some of that receptivity into their waking life as well. So they're looking for those signs of power. They're looking for confirmations in their environment during their waking hours as well. Just as that eagle was a sign of power, a confirmation for me, because I'd been thinking about what I was going to talk about. This was just yesterday. And I was just thinking, well, maybe I'll do mouse and eagle vision. And then perhaps 15 minutes later, there's that majestic eagle going the same way I'm going. And I stayed watching it for a couple of minutes, something like that, and then it felt like, okay, message received. Thank you, brother. Thank you for sharing with me. I want to read a quote from a great book, Awakening to the Spirit World. This is co-authored by one of my direct teachers, Sandra Ingerman, and also Hank Wesselman, both accomplished shamans. The subtitle on this book is The Shamanic Path of Direct Revelation. That's one of the beautiful things about dreaming in all its forms. It is direct revelation. You might want to ask somebody about the possible interpretation of a dream, but realize that symbolism is coded for our brains, and whereas somebody might be able to cast a little bit of light or suggest a different way of looking at it, our internal director put that together primarily for our eyes and our psyches and our hearts. This quote comes from the chapter on dreams. Shamans hold that all worlds are dreams, and that these dreams can be shaped, altered, redreamed, and navigated by the dreamer, who is also dreaming him or herself and being dreamed by the dream. It's all a dream. Rather than the world being a fixed reality, as it is seen by today's mainstream approach, the shaman's understanding of the world is much more optimistic and flexible, because it holds that since everyone is collectively dreaming, each person can, with awareness and an active will, change the dream. Now, I'm not going to have time to go into lucid dreaming today, but if you've played with that at all, you know that that's a remarkable way to interact with spirit and with the powers of the mind. I was really into lucid dreaming maybe 5 years ago. I think it's great to check out the equipment that's available to us. But I much prefer using dreaming as an avenue of connection, as a way of accessing the spirit world. Because these days I am much more interested in what the spirit world has to say to me than I am in what I have to say to the spirit world. I pretty much know it on this side. I want to know what it's like on the other side. So there are lots of ways of doing that. The Dream Channel is available to us. And you can approach it through different angles. You can think of this, well, it's the subconscious. We're working with the hidden powers of the mind. And that's fine, that's valid. Or you can think it is the spirit helpers. We're opening a window there. We're creating a pathway where spirit helpers can reveal themselves more easily. We're inviting them in to be a part of our lives. And I think it's pretty obvious. That's the route I choose more than the psychological version, although the psychological definitely has benefit. And you can also view it as we're connecting with the quantum realms more fully and more deeply. So whatever you like. They really lead to the same place. They're just different frames for the same experiences. Important thing to realize is we are the catalysts. We're the ones that make it happen. We create that magic. We open the channel to whatever it is, back in us or way back behind us. So nighttime dreaming is a great place to start. I've given some suggestions already, doing the dream seeding and setting the intention to wake up when you have a significant dream, even if it's when you wake up at the normal morning time, but as soon as you do wake up, to write that down, to make a record of it, and not to try to analyze it too quickly. I would also suggest that before you invite somebody else to give their opinion, their take on your dream, before you look up what the symbols might mean in a dream book or online, that you take a crack at it. What does the dream seem to mean to you? One key in this approach is figure out where the emotions were strongest, because usually that's where the dream's message is most strongly revealed. Another way to access the dream channel is doing ceremony. I've been involved with a couple of groups who do vision quests, and even if you're not a quester, if you're holding the space for them back at the fire, back at the table, back at the sweat lodge, boy, that is a powerful place to be in. The energies are very strong, the spirits are very close, and I can easily make the transition of going into the dream channel, going into a mild trance state there. Sun dances, great opportunities for that. Even if you're not dancing, even if you're on the periphery holding space, that medicine comes through in a very strong manner. Other ceremonies such as sweat lodges, native dances, pretty much any kind of native ceremonial, ritual observances. These could be church services as well. Lots and lots and lots of different kinds of ceremonies. And of course, if you look at these from the rational analytical mind, trying to figure out what native garb might signify, or why did they play the rattles then, or why did the guy on the drum stop playing right then, well, you might miss the whole thing. Because if you can approach it from the heart, from that place of open-heartedness and wholeheartedness, you're probably going to get a lot more out of it. Shamanic journeying is one of my favorite techniques to open those channels, to keep them open. And as in Sandra's book, this is a path of direct revelation, where the spirits communicate directly with you. And Awakening to the Spirit World has some really good information. Sandra's got a number of books, a number of CDs out there that explain shamanic journey and that can take you through the different stages. So you can do it on your own, or you can do it with a guide. Meditation, great technique for going internally, for silencing that thinky, talky mind and allowing the chance for something else to come through. When we approach life from that place of stillness and silence, it creates an opening that allows all kinds of wondrous things to manifest through us. I like visioning. That visualization exercise we did at the beginning today, you can obviously lead yourself through something like that. There are lots of different tapes and CDs that are available of people leading you on visualizations, people doing groundings. That can be a great way to stimulate that creative, imaginative part of your mind. It's important to realize that even though we use imagination, that doesn't mean that we're just making this stuff up. What I like to do is to use the imagination as a portal, as a way for other things to reveal themselves. Artists know this very well. They go into trance states when their works just start creating themselves, when the sculpture starts carving itself, when the painting starts revealing itself on the canvas. Chanting can lead to a similar space, put you into that place. A lot of times chanting is just so bliss-filled. It's chanting the names of God or doing the dances of universal peace. There's oftentimes a communal energetic that sets up. Immersion in nature. I find that if I don't get out into nature about once a week, I start getting a little squirrely. It's like I've got cabin fever, even if I've been out socializing, doing different things with people, interacting. If I'm not in nature about once a week, things start to compress for me. And those channels, which I try to keep open wide, aren't as easily accessible. So what we're doing in all these practices, and there are probably some that I haven't mentioned, we're creating the space to allow the other side, the spiritual realm, to come through. My hope is that you use these gifts to bless yourself, to grow and develop, to be all that you were intended to be your true self in all your intended glory. That's a pretty good dream. Well, as you probably know, Human Spirit Radio has a lot of good offerings. This is the last show in this particular series, but Friday is the payoff day, and that many of the Human Spirit Radio Network broadcasts are live at 2 o'clock Pacific on Friday afternoons. The first Friday of every month is Waking Gods and Goddesses, Embodying Divine Wisdom and the Sensual Life with host Maria West. The third Friday of each month is Human Spirit Radio founder and host Sarah McCroskey. Sarah invited me to do this series of shows. This is actually the conclusion of my 5th series. I like to do 6-month shows, and I'm so glad that she gave me these opportunities. Thank you, Sarah. And her show is great. She interviews many different people, many walks of life. Never know what's coming up next unless you sign up to get the monthly reminders, and you can do that at the Human Spirit Radio site. The fourth Friday of each month is Conscious Evolution of Divine Feminine Archetypes with host Amanda Eloish Johnson. And this show is for guys as well. I thoroughly enjoy it. Amanda also has many different illuminating guests, and she's great on her own, with or without guests. That's a good one. Now, on the third Wednesday of each month at 6 o'clock Pacific is You're Already Psychic. Tools to strengthen your intuition, follow your divine guidance, and live a joy-filled life with Jessica Gabrielle McKay. This month, she's got shaman Francis Rico, and boy, he's great. I've been to Teotihuacan with him several times, and tune in. You're going to get your money's worth. And of course, as always, all Human Spirit Radio shows are free, offered without advertising, offered for your betterment. Let's make this a better planet. I want to very briefly run through the different shows that I've offered in this Exploring Sacred Topics series, because they're all available in the Human Spirit Radio archives or on my website at jai+cross.com. That's JAICROSS.com. Completely free of charge, as audios, videos, and also my last series on, what was the last series? Exploring. There's a lot of good stuff there. I've actually got all the series if you look around a little bit. So in this sequence, we went through rooting in the sacred time, creating sacred space, establishing sacred connection, cultivating sacred power, cultivating sacred passion, developing sacred power, and today, living as sacred dreaming. So if you missed any of those, if you're interested, just go to the website, click on Exploring Sacred Topics, and it's all there for your edification. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for making time for me. Thank you for allowing me into your life.